With the advance of charter schools and privatization, schools for profit taking over our public schools, you have a troika being built, which has their own separate interests. And these interests are opposed to the overall interests of the students, their communities, and the teachers and other workers in the school site.
Well, charter schools is going to eliminate current jobs that are represented by a union. And, it's at least 60 of the current union members. If one school is going to make way for a charter school, and that's just the beginning. I mean, the trend in the future is that if it's not checked, more jobs will be lost.
And who's behind these charters?
Well, big money, billionaire money.
I am a member of California School Employees Association. Personally, I am against charter schools. They are a bunch of thieves. This business for them is just profitable. They force the parents to volunteer at the schools doing our jobs, and if they don't do it, then they dismiss the kids. They don't have a record of where the kids are going after they leave their charter schools, and it's really a very bad situation for the parents and mainly for the students, and of course for unions. So charter schools are not the best. They haven't proven to be the best over our regular schools, and they are cheating, they are stealing, they are using their money at their leisure, and they cover up with false documents. So charter schools are bad news.
I knew there was a lot of propaganda and misinformation, and there is a whole force that is promoting charter schools, and there was not much to counter it. So I had the time, and I decided I was going to investigate them and start a blog and do what I could.
What's the name of your blog?
I have three, actually. The main one is, the first one was Perimeter Primate, and then I pursued the Broad Foundation for a while and did, what I do is I just do my research, and then I put my research on my blogs, so it's a place for the public to read what I've discovered. So that was called the Broad Report, and then I did Charter School Scandals, and that's my main blog right now.
And what was going on in Oakland with charter schools?
Well, we had charter schools start in the 1990s, and then we had a state takeover, and we had the California Department of Education, the state superintendent sent us state administrators who had been trained by the Broad Foundation in their Broad Superintendent's Academy. And we had a series of 3 of those. And when they came in, they just started, to me, just ripping up the district, at bringing in more and more charter schools, closing down schools. The first one had to have a bodyguard because he upset the community so much. I just said, this isn't right. And with more and more charter schools coming up, my neighborhood school was losing enrollment, and so I just thought that there were so many lies associated with these charter schools, of them being superior, and without looking at other factors that were contributing to that. Primarily in the case of the one that I knew about were compliance contracts that they would force students and parents to sign. And if you're going to require a signature of compliance contracts, that's a whole different type of school.
What is a compliance contract?
It says you'll agree to certain behavioral things. You're going to, if you don't come to school often enough, you're at risk of being kicked out. If you don't produce high enough grades, or you have discipline issues, you're at risk of being kicked out. If the parents don't do X, Y, Z, if students don't do A, B, C, the family is at risk of being kicked out of the charter school. So, it's not a fair field. When you're comparing the test scores of schools like that, and that's the only thing that we go by now is a school's test scores, whether it's a good school or not. If you're comparing those test scores to test scores of a school that's taking all students, even the ones whose parents are unable to fulfill the requirements of a compliance contract, or students who are of the same type, it's a different type of student.
But it's the fact that they're going to bring so many kids up there.
What's happening?
Well, they said they're going to bring from 1,200 to 1,600. Well, there's a sign on the gate that says they're going to bring 1,200 to 1,600 kids up there, and that's just too many kids to go up there.
For our neighborhood.
Mhm.
What will happen to the neighborhood if that happens?
The traffic, there's going to be all the traffic up there. When Adams was there, it was a lot smaller school, and I wanted Adams to stay. I never wanted Adams to close, and it was a lot smaller school. But we had the summers off, and the Calibers wants to run almost 12 months, yeah.
All year round. And we don't need all that traffic up there. We have small streets up there. It's a small neighborhood. The people who have lived up there have lived there for many years. They don't know anything about what's going on right now. And charter schools, there's a charter school on every corner. We don't need a charter school up there. We don't need them profiting. We don't need them bringing all the kids from Richmond. We just don't need them bringing all those kids up to our small neighborhood.
It's all a blur to me because I just came from the representative council of our union where we were able to pass a major resolution against charter schools. So I know there's something going on, but I'm exhausted.
Why did your union pass a resolution against charter schools?
I mean, it's the right thing to do. It's timely. We've seen the encroachment of charter schools in the West Contra Costa Unified School District, union jobs, union teacher jobs, as well as cafeteria worker, unionized jobs, janitor jobs are all at stake with the rise of charter schools that don't have to hire union labor.
And who's behind the charter schools?
Oh gosh, big moneyed interests. I guess a lot of Wall Street names that made their fortune on Wall Street. So the charter school proponents are putting out that idea of parent choice. And so it's very appealing. As a parent, I could not look at another parent and say, no, you shouldn't have a choice. So I think that sort of parents find the idea of a choice to be appealing to them. But the reality is it's draining money away from traditional or local public schools. And also I think it should be illegal to put public money behind what are essentially private institutions. So I think we need to educate the community about what charter schools really do. And also I haven't seen the data. Are they really doing a better job than public schools? I think the jury's still out on that. But as a public school teacher and as a parent, I do think that public school teachers need to teach curriculum that's more relevant to students' lives, make classes engaging, and try to get our kids to do the best they can.
I'm Tova Halpern, 30-year veteran of this district, still working full-time as a long-term sub, still worth my salt, and see the importance of veteran teachers still very much being in the scene at public schools, helping the beginning teachers learn their way and promote them with such a difficult job. I am here because I see the divisiveness of charter schools. Instead of working with us together, promoting. Education and skills, they're divisive. And I could go on, but thank you for finding out about what charter schools are really doing to our public schools, and the fact that we do, as teachers, want to work together. We do not want to have charter schools pretend that they're public schools when they're really promoting private philanthropy, which aids private school providers.
Rachel Fontenot, and I feel very strongly that we all need to support public schools. I think that as a parent, we need to support the infrastructure that's in place, the elected officials that manage our schools, the public money that we all pay in taxes. I have a say into where it goes. I think that we're selling our public schools and the employees short by putting our public monies in support of charter schools where we have very little say. There's very different oversight. They have a totally different set of rules. And so I am 100% in support of the public schools and making them better and stronger instead of weakening the system that we've taken hundreds of years to create.
So you don't buy the argument that charter schools are public schools?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's easy to say, and it's easy to say to people who, maybe don't understand all of the politics involved in public schools and the funding streams. So no, I don't believe that at all.
How have the charter schools harmed public education in Richmond?
I think it has weakened the Richmond's public schools, or the West Contra Costa school district's ability to make changes where they really need to make changes. They are they're required to meet certain federal guidelines, and they have to adhere to them. But by giving the money to charter schools that don't have to comply with those same regulations, it weakens their ability to make improvements where they need to.
Do you think that charter schools are having the effect of resegregating education?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Absolutely. I think they are. They have much more flexibility as to where they set up, who they can accept. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Excuse me. Who is doing the work? I mean, do they have union employees doing the service work, the lunches and the other work in the charter schools?
Well, no, they do not have to have union employees, and that's one of the reasons why I support the public schools, is because they do have to comply with union regulations, union employees, and so I'm supporting the union employees here tonight too.
And who do you think is behind the charter schools?
Well, it was very interesting you say that because the board makeup of many of the charter schools are comprised of venture capitalists, and I just find that interesting that they take such an interest in our public education, and I really kind of doubt their sincerity. In my child's education, it's probably more along the lines of their profit capability. So my family moved to California about 5 years ago from Florida. And in Florida, they do not have teachers' unions. In Florida, under Jeb Bush's gubernatorial administration, charter schools made a huge presence in Florida, and we saw the weakening of the public school system in Florida. And
what was that like?
It was very segregated. They could choose the students that they wanted. The students that required too much special attention stayed in the public schools, which tends to be more expensive to serve those students with higher needs, but they had the flexibility to not enroll them or say they couldn't handle them. And so then again, it was put back on the public schools to meet that need that is more expensive. So we also saw the financial benefit of the investors in the schools. It's a business. They're not teachers who have a drive to teach. They are investors, and I respect their business. That's not what I do. I'm not I'm not an investor. I'm not an educator. I'm a parent, and I want the people teaching my kids to be people that I helped put in place through my election of the school board members, my involvement in PTA, and what have you. So I really feel like the charter schools prey on the parental emotions by telling them that we can do a better job, when I think that if the parents really got involved and understood how the system worked, they would see that it's really contraindicating the child's best interest in the long term, because it weakens the system. And I think the system has been put in place to meet a need that's part of our society. And I just think that they're unintentionally weakening the infrastructure of the unions and the schools and the strength that they can bring.
They should be very, very concerned. These individuals with heavy, heavy corporate interests are infiltrating every aspect of public education, K-12, community college, CSU, and UC. And unless something is done to repeal charter school laws, keep our tax dollars out of for-profit colleges, they're essentially just siphoning off. Those funds are in the general fund, and a portion of that goes to public education. Very small portion comes from the lottery, by the way. It's like less than 2%. I think it's 1.8%. But so all those general fund monies, property taxes, income tax, sales tax, all of that is divvied up to the various programs that the government offers. When it gets siphoned off to charter schools, for-profit colleges, non-profit entities, which also are infiltrating in these public education institutions, there's very little money left for keeping public education public. And that's what's happening right now, and that's a real crisis. No one wants to talk about that. The politicians don't want to talk about that because the business interests that keep bloating those things up are feeding their campaign coffers. But that is what's happening.
I mean, let's just put it this way, all right? Privatization of education is organized crime, and therefore we need to be changing the narrative, all right? For-profit colleges are not for-profit colleges. They're subprime colleges, disaster colleges, criminal organizations that should be indicted under RICO. When we begin to think like this, we change the narrative and we begin to see these people for what they really are. They are our mafia. All right? They take an oath of omerta when they go into certain rooms. Now, they may not draw blood, but they promise to each other that they will not make anything public, that there will be no disclosure.
United Teachers Los Angeles has spent a lot of money signing up people who work in charter schools. I don't want to call them teachers because they have not all gone through the process that we who work in public schools must go through in order to become credentialed. And the union appears mainly interested in having them pay dues. UTLA has failed in defending its members. I began teaching in the mid-'80s, and in 1989, we went on strike. That was during the presidency of Wayne Johnson. The union at that time was much more militant, much more willing to confront our employer, and much more willing to demand better treatment for teachers. Ever since that time, things have gone downhill, and successive administrations of the UTLA have become more and more accommodating to charter schools, especially. There are people who are in leadership in UTLA who actually sit on the boards of certain charter schools. The statewide union also, California Teachers Association, has spent a lot of money supporting charter school employees. This year at the National Education Association, the Teacher of the Year Award, which is given out by CTA, is being given to a charter school teacher. What the criteria are to determine whether that teacher is better than any other teacher in LA Unified is really a mystery. But it doesn't sit well that UTLA spends more money and energy on charter school scabs than they do on career teachers. Sitting on the board of a charter school is usually a paid position, and we have not heard anything to the contrary. A number of people in leadership at UTLA actually do sit on the boards of charter schools, but they haven't disclosed how much they're being paid. So when they advocate for more charter schools, one can't help but draw the conclusion that they're mainly interested in their own incomes. Former President John Pettis sits on the board of Montague Charter School, as does a retired employee named Michael Bennett. And neither have disclosed how much money they make, but Pettis, for one, insists that charter schools are here to stay and we have no business opposing them. Charter schools are all about marketing. They will always claim to be providing a private school education without charge to children who are enrolled in them. But this is a very unclear point. What is a private school education? They do not provide the kind of in-depth and broad educations that some of the well-known preparatory schools in the United States provide. They do not provide smaller class sizes. They do not provide greater involvement from teacher to student. The union has been quite hostile to those of us who oppose charter schools. The president himself, Alexander Caputo Pearl, has spoken against the initiative to remove public funding from charter schools. As I said, John Pettis, former president, actually works for a charter school, and he also is vehemently opposed to any opposition to charter schools. The state organization, California Teachers Association, has also done a lot to sign up charter school teachers. Well, I think the parents are being deluded, being lied to. Charter schools can do whatever they want with their money, and they can hire whomever they wish. So they're not necessarily getting better people in the classroom. Parents should be educated. There should be greater communication, clear communication between teachers, their union, United Teachers LA, and the parents. But the leadership has ignored this. The recent loss in the school board elections, where 2 seats that were supported by UTLA were won by charter advocates, indicates that there is very little communication directly between teachers, who spend most of the day with students and their parents. Parents and the community should be talking to teachers. Teachers are under attack, and many teachers in schools would rather keep quiet and not demand what they know to be right in order to avoid confrontation. And they can only do this if they have the support of parents. There needs to be publicity about the excesses of charter schools. Some of them have made horrible demands on public schools for facilities. They have segregated children and faculty, and they create a climate of disdain for those kids who are in public schools. This has to be made more clear to the general public. The union must tell the story, and the union has direct access to parents every day. Defend Public Education Now is a statewide group, and I am a member. We are advocating for the elimination of charter schools, no matter how they're defined. The union would like to define some as good, being more accountable to parents, more transparent in how they deal with public money. But all of this is just picking at the edges, and what is really needed is the elimination of charter schools. If the people who support charter schools, the wealthy, the oligarchs, want to make wonderful private schools, they should just begin private schools and take children without charge, educate children without charge. But they're not going to do that.
I'm Nick Melvoin, and I'm running for school board. We don't have a lot of time before May 16th, so I've got to talk fast. I was born here in LA.
He was bar mitzvahed here in the district.
Taught middle school in Watts. And then I worked for President Obama in the White House. Here's my plan. We need to support our teachers. Better pay, better training, quality, not tenure. Cut red tape and stop hiring more bureaucrats so we can spend more money on kids. like bringing art and music back. I'm Nick Melvoin, and I'm running for school board to put kids first, kids first, kids first, kids first.
Well, actually, as a parent and as an activist, I've always been involved in the education of our students in our community. I feel that these charter schools, I'm not saying they're all bad, but they're privatizing our education for our students. A lot of parents don't understand this, and we need to educate them and make them realize that they got to get involved, because this is not right. Charterizing our school is privatizing our schools. And, you know, the charters are kind of like cherry-picking students, which they shouldn't be doing that, but they're doing it, and they're excluding students that need the education the most. A lot of students are very bright, very smart, and I mean, I believe all our students are bright, but some of them have more difficulty learning. So I believe they're pushing the kids that are having difficult learning aside, and that's not okay. Parents should know this, and they should get involved in their children's education. Charter schools are schools that they run their own money. They get money from the district, from the government, but they don't accept students. Not all students. They only accept certain students. So charter schools are kind of like privatizing our education, and pretty soon they're leaving the students that need the education the most. They're putting them aside, and they're just, you know, working with certain students. So to me, that's unfair. Well, I've been an activist here, and my children came to Roosevelt. I also came to Roosevelt, and it's totally different now as it was before. It's really sad because Roosevelt High School was a really good school, and throughout the years they started like dividing it. They did this plan where they called it the Partnership for Los Angeles School, which is called PLUS. They came in, supposedly they were going to help us out, but they totally messed up our school. They divided it into 7 schools, and I mean, it just was a disaster. Villaraigosa, which was our current mayor, got involved in that, and he totally really messed up our school. And now, you know, like, where is he now that our school, Roosevelt High School, needs him, you know? He really didn't help us out much. Partnership for Los Angeles School is kind of like privatizing a school also. They were running their own money, they were doing their own thing, but they really didn't help our students. A lot of students that needed the help dropped out, they got kicked out, and they didn't really help us out. So, you know, I think that parents here in Roosevelt and in other schools that are having the same difficulty should really get together, learn their rights, have their children learn their own rights too, and work together, because, you know, we can't allow these people to you know, take away what our children need. Education should be good for everybody, you know.
Thank you. Mr. Crane, you want to call a roll?
On tab 23, the resolution, Ms. Gallatin. No vote. Mr. Kaiser? Yes vote. Ms. Lamont? Absent. Ms. Martinez? No vote. Dr. Bladovic?
No.
Dr. Bladovic?
No.
Dr. Bladovic?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Yes vote. Ms. Garcia?
No.
Item fails.
Thank you.